Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. I am Bill, the company's expert, and hopefully you can see me because I had an interesting development with my computer a moment ago. It's these little magic moments that make life interesting, you know? So hopefully you can see me, and this is going out as planned. This is the live stream that I do a couple of times a week, where it's basically a live Q&A. So you get to ask me anything. If you are a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should be able to get in the chat and ask me questions. You should be able to see the chat box somewhere in the vicinity of my video feed, my beautiful face, depending on what device you're watching this on. So if this is you and you are engaged in job search or wondering about your career, anything like that, let me know. I see there are 5 people here, so at least this is going out live. That's something. Yeah, Windows, Microsoft, once again, in their infinite wisdom, they're so good at what they do. It's breathtaking. They issued an update, like that monthly update for Windows, on Windows 10 at least, and if you have a dual monitor setup, it breaks it. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. You know, in this day and age where people are complaining that they're not hiring anybody in IT, it's good to know that a lot of those people at Microsoft are employed, because it's just fantastic, the products that they deliver. Yeah, so that's what happened to me. So what I get now, because I have a dual monitor setup going, a dual camera, dual monitor thing, and when I log in, I get a blank screen for my main monitor. It takes nearly 10 minutes for that second monitor to wake up. So it's beautiful. I couldn't reboot my computer in time, so I had to do it without rebooting it. Anyway, enough of the sob story. I'm here. There are 5 people here. You guys are awesome. This is a forum for you guys to ask me anything you want about job search, about job interviews, about discovering jobs. And I will do my best to help you out. There's a lot of people, especially younger people or less experienced people, when it comes to job search that are struggling right now, and they don't know where to find the jobs. They don't know how to put themselves up for the jobs, how to get interviews, and how to get an offer. You know, they don't know how to negotiate offers. They don't know how to, write a resume that's going to get them an interview, like all the rest of it. So there's a lot to cover here. So if you are wondering anything, let me know. This is called How to Get More Interviews. So we're going to certainly talk about that. Justin Hallbrook is here. Justin says, what is your advice for someone that has a large gap on resumes, but it's by choice? That's like being bald by choice, that kind of thing. It's exactly the same. Here's what my advice would be. First of all, if you're going through a recruiter, that means you're applying for a posted job, a job that has been posted publicly, and it's being run by a recruiter on behalf of a hiring manager. The problem is recruiters are trained to look at work gaps as a big red flag. Okay, this is the problem. You see, the idea is that, if you have a gap in your employment history, so maybe there's if you look at your work history and you were working, from, the time you completed school or something up until, say, 2019. And then there's a gap of 18 months between 2019 and 2020. And then your next job starts in late 2020 or something like that. And they can see that there's a gap there of nearly 2 years. The recruiters know that they can ask you and say, what's this work gap? And you can give a seemingly logical, reasoning. That's a certain logic to it. And it sounds very benign, but they don't really know for a fact if that is indeed the real reason for the work gap. And what they're paranoid about is if you were looking for work and you couldn't find it, right? Because what that tells them is that there's a chance that there could be something wrong with you, right? And nobody wanted to hire you for a reason. And if there is something that suggests that could be the case, then they regard you as a higher risk candidate, right? That's the reasoning. Now, I'm sure that reasoning does play out in the real world, but as most people can tell, I mean, it's not necessarily the case, right? A common reason why people have work gaps, other than they can't find a job, is that, they're taking care of a sick family member, someone with a disability or someone with like a terminal illness or something like that. And there are other things too. Maybe you go back to school, right? Which would presumably be easier to demonstrate, right? But there's a variety of reasons for it. So you see, the thing about recruiters is that everybody, for whatever reason, assumes that recruiters are trying to find the best candidate for the job, right? We make that assumption. That's actually false. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for the least risky candidate. That's a different thing. So if we're looking at everything in terms of risk, a work gap could be a risk, so they label it as a red flag. And that's why the recruitment and selection process, when you go through a recruiter, is biased against several things, and one of the things are people with work gaps, right? So, having said all of that, what the hell do you do about it? Okay, let's tackle that. Now, here's the deal. One approach is to try and minimize the damage and still go through recruiters, okay? So what I'd recommend if you're going to try and do that, the only thing that I know of that kind of works with any kind of reliability is, and one thing I got to mention is that this only applies to current work gaps, right? So if you had a job and then you took like a 4-year break for, whatever reason, and then, backpacking around the world, I don't know, and then you got another job and now you're looking for another job. Now, that's a past work gap. That doesn't really matter to a lot of recruiters. Most of the time, that's not going to matter. What they care about is a current work gap. So if you had a gap between your last job was like a year or more ago, it begs the question, what have you been doing in the last 12 months? Like, was there what have you been doing? Did you go back to school or have you been looking for work? Right? If you can't find it after 12 months, to them, that would be a red flag. So, okay, so it just matters. It's just a current work gap that matters. So the first strategy is to kind of try and get through the recruiter, okay? So what you can do is you can go out right now and, I don't know, take some, register for some free online classes somewhere, okay? Something relevant to the work you're trying to find, like in your industry, right? And then if anyone asks you, because they're going to ask you, what's this work gap, this current work gap you have? You could say, well, it isn't really a work gap. I just went back to school, right? I decided to bone up on my skills, make sure that they're au courant, that they're up to date. And for that reason, I took several online courses. I'm just sort of finishing them now, and they'll be done in a month, a week, whatever. And then I'll be ready to rejoin the workforce. And that's why I'm here, right? So it all looks above board, right? Now, it's technically not a lie because you are registered for classes, right? Okay. And then it's all above board. It's all legitimate. It all checks out. You did do the courses. Just take the damn course, whatever, some one-day thing, whatever. And you could use that. And sometimes that works. They'll go, oh, okay, you just went back to school, right? So that's one approach. Okay, but that has limited effectiveness. That may work or may not work, okay? However, the other alternative you have is to do what most people do to get jobs, is they don't apply for posted jobs. Instead, they go after the hidden jobs, the ones that are not posted, and they do this using networking, right? Okay? And when you go over networking to get a job, nobody gives a rat's ass about work gaps. Okay, a lot of the things that recruiters have hang-ups on and put a lot of emphasis on, for example, years of experience, things like this, usually people just don't care about at all if you're getting a job over networking, right? That's why most people get a job over networking. It's not subject to these silly whims, right? So for example, If you are changing careers, same thing. Very hard to go through a recruiter and change careers, because what's the first question out of the recruiter's mouth? It's, how many years of experience do you have, right? And if you're changing careers, by definition, you have 0 years of experience in this job, right? I've never done this job before. I did other things before, and I'm moving to this. I want to change careers, right? So they say, well, if you have 0 years of experience, how could you possibly think you're qualified for it? I'm sorry, no dice. Rejected, right? But as we know, people change careers all the time. How do they do it? Networking, right? People don't care about that. If they know, if they've sat down with you and they've had a conversation with you and you clearly know your stuff and you're very capable, you're very professional, you've got good communication skills, good soft skills, people can tell you know what you're talking about. And then on top of that, you have a good rapport with the person. A lot of times they'll give you a chance if they have a position to fill, and they think favorably about you and you seem to know your stuff and you can back it up with like a resume that shows a lot of transportable skills, they'll give you a chance. That's usually how that stuff works. So first attempt, try and get through recruiters using the education story after enrolling in some free classes so it isn't a total lie. And then hopefully that works. If it doesn't work, then get a job like most people on networking. This doesn't come up. Nobody cares about work apps. They're not hiring you on you talking a good game and talking about how great you are. They're hiring you rather because you've demonstrated how good you are. That's the idea. Hopefully that makes sense, Justin. Alpine's pal says, hey again, not to go off topic again. There is no off topic really. This is just a live thing about careers and employment. So it's all good. But I hit a confusion point about being extroverted. I can do well in social situations and feel good about it. More importantly, enjoy the benefits of that. Okay, listen. You're about to be exposed to my rant on this. Okay, so strap yourself in. No, it's a privilege to hear me rant about this. Listen, it's very quick. I'm going off the definition of extrovert and introvert as defined by the Myers-Briggs type indicator. Okay, that's the kind of personality test that I grew up with. I've had that the validity of that demonstrated to me several times. I made everyone in the company take that test, actually, back in the day. It's fallen from favor a little bit these days. I feel that people, like recruiters are, as a group, are idiots, and they what they did is they took this thing that's been around for a very long time that works. It does a very simple thing and it works, but they took it and they tacked on a bunch of psychobabble bullshit to it and tried to get it to predict if someone would be good in a certain job, which it was never designed to do. That's not what it does. But they tacked on a bunch of psychobabble to it to see if it can predict who could do a job better than who else. And of course it failed at that. So they declared the entire thing pseudoscience and then just said, no, we don't use it anymore, which is garbage because it is quite valid. Anyway, if you go back to its original form where it attempts to just tell you basic things, right? So the definition of extrovert is someone who can do social interaction, but they enjoy it. They find it an energy charging activity. It's what they do for fun, okay? And the definition of introvert was the opposite. It's someone who can do social interaction every bit as good as an extrovert, you know? The only difference is that it's an energy draining experience for you. You don't enjoy it. It's not what you do for fun. Right? So if you're the type of person that at the end of the day to relax or to unwind, you go off into a room by yourself, you read a book, you watch TV, you go on the computer, you play some video games, whatever. Like solo activity, you do that to recharge the battery, you're an introvert. That's what it's saying. If you come home at the end of the day and you surround yourself with like 50 people, especially people you don't know, and you all get together, you have a bit of a kind of a party / get together, and you talk to everybody and everybody talks to you, and you do that to unwind, you're an extrovert. Those are like the definitions, at least that I'm going off. That's how it defines it in the Myers-Briggs type indicator. I think it's a great definition, you know? I mean, you guys know, just because, you know, you're an introvert, you like to be alone, you don't hang out with a lot of people for fun all the time, doesn't mean that you can't do public speaking, you can't have a conversation. You know, you're not effective at presenting or persuading or, you know, communicating and being clear. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't mean that you're not emotionally intelligent or any of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why I like this definition. It seems the accurate way to describe it. Okay. So I can do well, importantly, enjoy the benefits. Yeah. I have the opposite problem. I can prepare for years for the standard interview questions. Every interview I have taken has got some questions causing me to respond, and give an incoherent response causing me to miss opportunity. Okay, well, what I'd have to say, about this is it sounds like just a lack of preparation, you know? Like, oh, sure, you know, you can prepare solo, you can prepare in front of the mirror or prepare by yourself. Yeah, that's definitely a part of it. That's phase 1 of 2, right? Phase 2 is where you prepare with someone else. You practice doing mock interviews. So if you're an executive, you pay for this. There's a very high demand for this. Executives that have a lot of money to spend, they hire HR companies. HR companies make a lot of money selling these services to primarily executives and companies, but primarily to individual executives to help them work on their interviewing technique, right? They offer other things too. They can give you all kinds of psychometric tests and things, but they make a lot of money doing that. And it's in high demand. And for lay people, you know, there's a lot of career coaches and things that offer this, right? You know, I work with, every couple of weeks, I do a live stream with Abby from the YouTube channel Life Work Balance, where we answer questions together. And she's a career coach. She is a recruiter or a former recruiter, and she helps candidates work on their interviewing technique. And the way it works is that you do a sort of pretend interview with her, a mock interview, right? That's how these things work. And then you act like it's a real job interview. And then at the end, she gives you feedback and says, like, listen, based on my professional opinion as a recruiter, this is what I think you're doing well. This is what I think you're doing poorly at. This is what you may not realize. And this is what I think you should work on, you know? Right? Now, the poor man's alternative to this is grab a friend or family member. You know, you can do this. And what that'll do is, like, after you've prepared solo, okay, so you've gone on the internet or whatever, you've read books, articles, whatever, you've figured out like how to answer job interview questions. You've figured out what your answer is going to be, right? And you've memorized those answers and all that kind of stuff, right? Okay, that's good. That's phase 1. Now, grab a friend or family member, like I said earlier today, some worthless person who's no use to themselves or anyone else, right? Who's not doing any good for anyone. They're loafing around. They're taking up space. Tell them, hey, come here. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to work on job interviews. You're going to be the interviewer and you're going to interview me. And we're going to do this like a real interview. And this is so that I get some practice doing this, right? You know, you can give them a list of questions or you can get them to get the questions off the internet, whatever. And then you practice doing that. Do 3 or 4 of those a day for 2 weeks. That's like 30 to 40 practice interviews, like if you do it Monday to Friday. At the end of 40 practice interviews, you're going to kick ass. You know, you'll have a lot of practice doing this when like someone's staring at you and, you know, you feel like, you know, a bit of anxiety, a bit of social awkwardness, you know, whatever, right? That's what it teaches you to do. It teaches you to perform under those conditions, which is the big hurdle for a lot of people when they go into a job interview, right? It's not necessarily being asked the questions. It's being asked the questions by a stranger in a strange place. It's not your turf. You're out of your comfort zone. Maybe they're putting a lot of social pressure on you, like awkwardness. You know, that's what the challenge really is, right? So the people who don't do this, they don't do like a rehearsal or a practice with another person. They make all their rookie mistakes in actual job interviews where it usually costs them the job. You know, you can avoid all of that. You could get the equivalent practice just at home in a couple of weeks. Your confidence will swell. You know, you'll be prepared. And I mean, you know the common questions. You've been asked them forwards, backwards, you know, you will know them. It won't be a challenge anymore. You'll be able to perform when people are staring at you. Panel interviews, you got 4 or 5 people on your side of the table all staring at you. They all look pretty fearsome, right? You know, you'll still be able to have composure, say the right answer. You know, that's the advantage of doing this. So that's how you prepare for it. It's like playing a musical instrument or playing a sport. You know, you're not just instantly good. You have to practice. You have to rehearse. So this is no different. Okay, so that's what I recommend for you, Guy Incognito. Make sure you're doing this. A lot of people, especially introverts, they consider like, that's an optional thing. It's like, okay, yeah, all preparation is optional. But I think you underestimate how useful and important it actually is to do this, you know? Okay, so those are the tools of success. Now it's up to you. It really doesn't take that much work, but it takes a little bit of an effort to do this, and you will be on your A game. Hopefully that was helpful. Alpine's Pal says, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's too bad it's taken its course of the telephone game. Thanks for that context. The telephone game. That's the extroverted thing? Yeah, well, you know, the thing about life is that it's a journey also. You develop your social skills along the way, right? And that goes in conjunction with things like maturity, right? So, you know, I imagine that's the reality for a lot of people, right? So, you know, the sooner you jump on this stuff and the sooner you start improving and not ignoring it and not like devaluing it, you know, opportunities will open up before you. A lot more of them, too. You know, being able to interview well with people, being able to have a good conversation, having some personal charisma, appearing professional, you know, following matters, etiquette, protocol, right? Networking. These are all very, extremely useful skills, right? And half the battle, I think, for a lot of people, especially introverts, is developing a respect for them. The problem is most people that are having a problem with this stuff, they don't respect it. First of all, they believe it's this big, slimy, negative thing, which it isn't. You know, so they disrespect it. They say, that's not something I would ever do. It's like, okay. It's like almost like saying, you know, I'm going to teach you to clean up your language so you're not dropping F-bombs in every sentence and not using very vulgar expressions constantly. And someone says, well, no, I don't, you know, like that sissy way of talking. That's beneath me. I'm fine the way I am. It's like, okay, but it's going to be harder to say get employed, you know, or it really limits your opportunities to get employed if that's your policy. You know what I mean? You know, if you've put in your 25 years in the construction industry, or like I did, and you know, you put in your time on the railroad, it's like, yeah, you know, you lose your perspective on that stuff. You don't talk like that in larger society, you know, and if you don't realize this, you're hurting yourself. So the first thing is to respect it and say, like, this is a thing. And once you've had a lot of doors slam in your face because you're not doing it, then hopefully, you know, you go, you know, maybe I should change my opinion on this and maybe see what this whole networking thing is about, or this whole not swearing constantly thing is about. You know, maybe there is something in it, right? And then the learning can begin, right? So there you go. Right, we've reached the end of the chat for now. Get in the chat. Let me know. There are 21 people here. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being here. You're all highly employable, highly valuable. An employer would be lucky to have you if you're between jobs right now, or or if you have other goals. You want to be an entrepreneur. You want to work for yourself. I encourage you to do that, but you got to do it in a smart way if that is your goal. You got to learn business. Business is the scientific study of how to make money, in case you don't know. That's what it is. So it's a pretty useful thing to learn for a couple of different reasons. Alpine's Pal says, yeah. And when you're dealing with people, you want to be aware of where you are, because not everyone is you. No one is you. Yeah. The thing is, here's something kind of that's basic to me now, but it took me years to realize this for whatever reason. Like you said, not everyone is you. Yeah. In the world, you're going to be interacting with many different types of people, right? Now, some of them are like you. And what you find is that we tend to get along very well with people who are like us. Okay, so if you have the same personality type as someone else, that probably means you guys will probably get along well. If you have the same background as someone else, like for example, I came up through engineering, somebody else came up through engineering, not only do you have the same personality, but you have like the same, you study the same area, the same discipline, or whatever you want to call it. That usually means that you have a lot in common. You're similar types of people, right? It may signal that you might have similar ambitions. You put the value on similar things, right? And so on. So we tend to get along with people that are like us. It's very easy to communicate with them. It's very easy to work together with people like us. Everyone, regardless of who you are, you tend to get along with people that are like you, right? The challenge, however, is that in this world, as I'm sure everybody knows here, you're not always thrown together with people that are just like you. You have to deal with people that are the opposite personality to yours, and people that don't have the same background as you, and so on. And that's where the challenge is. Right? So when they talk about communication skills and collaboration skills and this kind of thing, they're not just talking about people like you. We're talking about every type of person that you're going to meet. So if you're an introvert, you probably will get along with other introverts, everything else being equal. But if you're thrown together with an extrovert and you have to kind of work together, it might be a bit more of a challenge, right? So that's what you learn. Like when you learn communication skills and collaboration skills, a lot of the soft skills, it's about interfacing with people that are not the same as you, but still being able to do it effectively. You can still develop a rapport with them. You can still persuade them. You can speak in a way that they understand what you're saying. You can convince them of something, right? For example, you might see that if you've ever had a job where, if you're someone that the way you communicate is very, very literal. Everything is explicitly stated. Everything is stated with great clarity, right? Not everybody operates like that. There's a lot of very intuitive people out there that kind of give you the gist of what they're saying. And then they just go, okay, I understand the details because I know what you're talking about. I pick up on context clues. I have an experience base. I know what you're talking about. Right? But when those two types of people try and work together, they communicate with each other, you get a lot of kind of interesting kind of fireworks developing, so this is very real stuff. So when we're young, we tend to, at least in my case, I can't speak for anyone else but myself, you figured out that, you have pretty decent communication skills, but what you don't realize is that's only with people like you. When you encounter someone not like you, you just go, well, they're stupid, right? That's what's going on here. It's that they're stupid. That's why this doesn't work, right? It's not because of any fault of mine, you know? If they weren't so out to lunch, this would work, you know? So that's where the problem lies. You know, and like, that's what you think when you're young, you know, at least what I did. And then you realize it's like, no, they're not dumb. It's just that they're different from you and they have a different way of communicating. And that was demonstrated to me where, you know, this was the Myers-Briggs thing where they put two of the same type of person together and they get them to do something. And they're two people that are like the polar opposite of me, for example. But you put them together and they're like extremely effective. And you're like, whoa, I thought that person was an idiot. How are they so good at this? Him, like that idiot and that idiot working together is so good. It's like they outperform me. How did that happen? It's like, that's demonstrating it. You see, they have their own way of thinking, way of working, way of communicating, right? I kick ass when I'm working with people exactly like me. You know, that's how I know I'm good. Anyway, it turns out everyone has the same assumptions here. That's what makes this so interesting, right? So to develop your communication skills, your collaboration skills, being able to do all the influencing stuff, like be an effective manager, all that kind of stuff, it's like you need to work with every type of person effectively. That's the skills you develop. Now think of a job interview. You're going and you're interviewing with a recruiter. Chances are the recruiter is not like you. If you come from a technical background, like a math and science kind of thing, like IT or whatever someone was talking about earlier, you know, and you're dealing with a recruiter who's like a sort of art and, you know, humanities type person or whatever, touchy-feely people person type, chances are you're going to have a challenge trying to relate to them and get them to see things your way, you know, but that's where the communication skills come in. Sophia says that's a nice analogy about respecting the process. Thank you. Well, good. I'm glad. Yeah. We can't learn something if we don't recognize that it has value, right? A lot of people start off with assumptions that a lot of things don't have value. That gets in their way. They're their worst enemy. Alpine's pal says, I imagine if the game was the opposite, where employers are begging you to work. Well, that sometimes happens, right? If you're in demand. You know, if you're lucky to be in that position, that you have people beating down your door trying to recruit you. You know? Trust me, that does happen. You know, if you have very specialized skills that, you know, in this geographic region, they need someone that can do that. And there's like 3 people in the entire region that can do that. And the other 2 are taken, you know, then they come to you. So yeah, that does happen. Matthew Harding says, I've submitted 60 online applications in the past month. I've received 14 rejections and no follow-ups from the recruiters. Should I be more concerned about the lack of responses or the 100% rejection rate? Okay. So Matthew, 60 applications is nothing. Nothing. Okay? You're competing against people that are putting in 1,000 applications easy. And they're customizing all of them. You know how they're doing that? AI. Right? They're using AI tools to give them an edge. So they can do 1,000 applications comfortably in a month. You could do 1,000 applications in a week. It would be a bit of a stretch to customize all of them, but you could do it. But these people are easily doing 1,000 in a month, customized, right? So that's what you're competing with. So what I'd recommend to you is if you're going to play the game of posted jobs, if you're going after the jobs in the posted job market, right? And you're going to play that game, then you need to embrace some of these AI tools, recognize them for, you know, they're not the be all end all, but they're very useful, and get your system down where you've got like a master copy of your resume, right? With all the stuff you've done on it, right? And then you use AI tools to sort of take that and make like a subset of it that's relevant to the job you're applying for. And, you know, it's optimized for that job. It's using the lingo that they're using in the job posting. And, you know, they say they're looking for this, this, and this. So you prioritize that, and that, you know, that kind of stuff, right? and then do a much higher volume. And that's the way to win at that game, right? Now, beyond that, if you're only doing what you've described here, I'm not sure, tune in to the hidden job market. Most jobs aren't posted. Of all the jobs that are out there, right? Maybe you know this, maybe you don't. I'm going to tell you anyway. Of all the jobs that are out there, all the jobs you see posted, that's 20% of them at most. The other 80 exist and you could get them, but they're not posted. The reason they're not posted is because they're not having problems finding candidates for those jobs because they're very desirable jobs. You know? Every job I've gotten in the last 20 years, at least, has been in the hidden job market. I've never gotten like management type jobs. They're not in the posted job market. A lot of professional jobs are not in the posted job market. You know, so look there. You know, don't take my word for any of this. Go out and do your own research and discover this yourself. So that's what I would do if I was in that situation. I'd be looking exclusively in the hidden job market. I would ignore posted jobs. That's just me. Posted jobs are the default method that a lot of young people use, or people that are new to getting hired. It's kind of the most obvious thing that leaps to mind, you know, the classified section of the newspaper or the posted jobs online. That's what kind of leaps to mind. But most people don't get hired that way. Most people get hired through some form of networking. That's how you access the hidden jobs, right? Things like direct outreach. Now, I did a video, like if you want to go deeper with me, some young people, when they hear this, that just turns them off and they go, screw that. It's like, okay, maybe you're not ready for that yet. You hopefully will be in a couple of years. You know, but if you want to go deeper with me, I have some resources to kind of like show you this stuff. First of all, in the description box under this live stream, under the video feed, in the description, there's links to several videos I've done, some resources there. One of them is called How Successful People Get Jobs. And if you watch that video, it's under 10 minutes, and it shows you what I'm doing is I'm doing one method of networking called direct outreach. And I'm not just talking about it, I'm actually doing it. Like, you can see my computer and stuff. And you can see what that looks like. So that might be something. I did a video a month ago on my channel. You can go back to my recent videos. This one is called How I'd Get a Job. And I cover 11 different methods of job search. Okay. So you could watch that video and look at alternate methods of getting jobs that you could do that are often more productive than applying for posted jobs. The problem with posted jobs is that the average number of applicants through posted job is something like 800. You know, they're getting like 800 online applications for each job. So you're dealing with recruiters, and then you're going through applicant tracking systems and things like this. You're basically, they're trying to put you on a level playing field with 800 other people, and you have to beat them hands down. Pretty tall order, you know? So it's getting to the point where that's like very self-defeating, a law of diminishing returns. So what a lot of people do is they'll get a job, they'll put themselves up for a job in the hidden job market. You're competing against 2 or 3 people, you know? So statistically, your odds of getting it go way up, you know? And it's also a completely different game. You're not dealing with recruiters, you're dealing with the hiring managers, like the boss. And, you know, it's about them having a rapport with you, stuff like that, and seeing you clearly know your stuff. It's exclusively how people get over work gaps and change careers and things like that. So look into it. Do all the research you can, and you'll see. Sophia Cromwell says, I hear so much about refining my AI skills, but the only AI I'm using right now is ChatGPT and Perplexity. Do you recommend any resources for learning the most commonly used AI tools in corporate America today? No, I don't. It depends what world you're in. You know what I mean? Like, if you're in IT, then yes. This is like the name of the game. right? If you're in other areas, not quite as much to varying degrees. I'm not a big expert in AI, so full disclosure. I use ChatGPT a lot. I've used a few other tools. You know, it's a great tool. It's not this huge thing that everybody is talking about. Yes, it's the first truly disruptive thing we've had in about 15 years. You know, so it is a big deal in that sense. But people are acting like it's like the absolute end of the world. It isn't. And there's a lot of people that don't know what they're talking about it. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of noise out there. What I would do is to get an answer for that, Sophia, is listen, you would, in order to know what to do, you first need to know what your goal is, right? So if your goal is to get employed, like if that's why you're asking, you know, that's a very specific purpose. And it doesn't really depend on what the reality is. Then it depends more on what the perception is. So if the reality is one thing, but all the gatekeepers to the jobs you want all believe something else, then you have to deal with that. You know what I'm saying, right? So the way to know for sure is to do some informational interviews. Do 1 or 2 informational interviews. If it's not a big deal to you, this isn't a high priority, you know, maybe do them over the phone or something, you know. Go on LinkedIn, connect with people that would know this. So I don't know what you're trying to do. So if you're asking like, what do recruiters think the best AI skills you should have if you're going after this type of job in this industry? If that's more specifically what you're wondering, then have some informational interviews with recruiters or directors of HR and ask them, you know, in your opinion, you know, what are the most valuable AI tools that candidates should have a working knowledge of, you know, if they want to succeed, if they want to get the opportunities in this area, you know, things like this, right? Don't just talk to one person, talk to several people. And if they corroborate the same, they're all saying the same thing, then it's like, okay, you know what you need to do. Right? If you're getting all different answers from different people, like about the same end goal, that shows you there is no real overarching one thing. You know what I mean? So that's how you get that information. I don't know it, and it's highly dependent on what world you're in. There's a lot of people that are not using AI at all. People aren't even using ChatGPT or anything. You know, some people are still not really using the internet that much. You know, or if they do, it's they do what you would do in the year 2000 on the internet. You know what I mean? It just not impacting them right now. You know, so that's the deal. So you need to use informational interviews to get very specific information about your exact thing right from the source, you know, whatever that is. And besides, I'm not in America, so that's another thing. I would be able to advise you even less. Dave228 says, "Hi Bill, love your channel. How do we practice interviewing if we don't know many people and can't find anyone loafing around?" Well, in a perfect world, you'd have friends, you'd have family members like siblings or, you know, people like that. I suppose depending on your circumstances and your age, you know, if you're living at home, you could do it with your parents. I mean, you know, I know it's not ideal, but this is like the volume of practice will make up for that, right? To a large degree. Now, if you can't find anyone, okay, that's where you would hire a career coach, right? There are many people out there that offer career coaching services. I'm not one of them. I don't provide that service, but like I do these live streams instead. Between the live streams and my courses, that's my involvement with this stuff. But like, for example, I do a live stream every 2 weeks with Abby from the YouTube channel Life Work Balance. She's a recruiter. She offers career coaching services where she does that. That's like, as I understand it, that's the bulk of what she does. She does mock interviews, pretend interviews with people. You know, I believe she does that with them on the first session, certainly, and probably after that too. But like, you know, you do like a pretend job interview. She asks you questions and then you answer them. And then at the end of it, she'll give you feedback and say like, listen, based on the fact that I'm a professional recruiter, this is what my advice to you is for this reason. This is what I feel you're doing. This is the good stuff you're doing. This is the bad stuff you're doing. Therefore, I have these recommendations. And then presumably you'd go away and you'd practice something and you come back and then you do another one. I assume that's how it works, but they're like your coach. They're the ones that prep you, just like a coach preps like a sports player for like a big game or something. They prep you to go and kick ass at job interviews, They also help you with doing the applications if that's kind of your area of concern. So that's the alternative. Like, you have to pay them, but the flip side is that they're like the real pros that should know this stuff. So that would be the obvious next thing to do if you can't find, a friend or family member that can work with you on this. And thanks for your kind words. Alpine's pal says, that's too much of a mouthful. I just want to call you Al. I'm just going to call you Al from now on. Just shorter. Al says there's a song, right? You could call me Al, right? Is it Paul Simon or something? That is like the most depressed, rich/famous person I've ever seen. It's Paul Simon. That guy never shuts up about, how he's not happy in various ways, while simultaneously being a global success. It's a beautiful thing. Al says, another question, why do employers always ask if you are Hispanic and if you have disabilities? I've never heard that before. Maybe that's an American thing. I assume it is. I'm not sure. I'd only be guessing about why that is. If you are Caucasian, make sure that you paint your face completely white. Like clown makeup is probably good. And then go down there and have them ask you if you're Hispanic. That's, you just say, no, I'm in disguise. That's the answer. And if they ask you if you have disabilities, just clutch your side and then fall out of your chair and foam at the mouth. And, that's how you get out of that question. I'm not sure. I'd only be guessing. It would probably be some kind of legal thing in the United States. I'm not sure. Al says, speaking of surveys, were we? Okay. The prompts say that big corporations depend on answers, but why? That's like gambling. I'm sorry, you lost me there. Yeah, I got a thing about surveys. Surveys are very polarizing. They don't do what they're purported to do. The only people that complete surveys are people that are either delighted or outraged. No one in the middle has the motivation to complete a survey. So you get these totally skewed, polarized results. Well, people seem to absolutely hate us and absolutely love us. There's data you can work with, So they throw the whole thing out and they do whatever the hell they were going to do anyway. And that's what it amounts to. You're welcome, Dave. Dave228. That's my favorite kind of Dave, of the 228 variety. Sophia says, in the US, those are required questions. Well, there you go. I must ask you if you're Hispanic. Isn't that how Nazi Germany started? Do you have grandparents of Jewish descent? That kind of stuff, Are you Hispanic? Do you know anyone who's Hispanic? If you knew someone who is Hispanic, would you say anything? Be careful, America. That's how it starts. Guy Incognito says, I wanted to ask at my last interview how many they were hiring because I could see that it was for multiple people. I thought it might be bad, so decided not to. Should I ask questions like that? No, you shouldn't. Your instinct was correct. Listen. When you go to a job interview or when you have any interaction with a recruiter or a hiring manager, there's a ton of things you would like to know, right? For example, you know how these people try and get the dirt on you by asking you questions like, what are your weaknesses? Right? They want you to spill the beans. Come on, Give me the real inside scoop. Peel back the layers and show me who you really are, inside. I want to know every sordid thing you've ever done. I want to know what you really think about these different things. That's what they want, right? They want like a window into you that reveals all. You probably want the same. This is a big company. Let's be honest, it probably has flaws. It probably doesn't treat its employees perfectly. There's probably going to be some issue. What are the issues? When people complain about this company, what do they usually say? What's the complaint? I'd love to know that. I'd love to know what I'm getting into. Who's my boss going to be? What are they like really? You'd love to know that stuff. Now, the temptation is to ask this stuff in the interview or to the recruiter, like outside of the interview, right? Especially the circumstances under which they're hiring, right? What's the time frame? How many people are you hiring? All that kind of stuff, right? The problem is that a lot of those questions, either they don't want to talk about that stuff or they can't talk about that stuff, and you're kind of putting them on the spot, right? So even if you got the information that you were looking for, which is probably not going to happen, you create awkwardness, you create a bad vibe. It's like they think, oh, okay, you're the candidate that put me on the spot, that kind of made me feel awkward by asking me these like pointed questions that I can't answer. I mean, my job is to represent this organization. I can't tell you what I really think of all their flaws. I might get myself fired for doing that. Like, I can't tell you that. So I didn't appreciate you like really putting the screws to me and asking me that stuff, right? So listen, the strategy that tends to work is to just get the damn job. And in order to get the job, you need to, put on a big smiley face and act like everything's awesome. You're excited about the whole thing. You got no problems with anything. You got no concerns. You're just very optimistic about this whole thing. You're looking forward to working, fruitfully and productively with them for a long time to come. That's your story. Stick to it. All these legitimate questions that you have, there's plenty of time to get answers for that later, if later even occurs. Like get the offer in your hand and accept the offer, and then you can ask them all this stuff. You can get answers on all this stuff, right? There'll be plenty of time for that later. In the case of your thing, if you do get the offer, then it's kind of moot whether you get an answer to this or not. But you know what I mean? It's the thing is, it's none of your concern. Just, you go down there, you do your best. If they want to hire you, great. If they don't, oh well, that's on them. You know what I mean? You had no control over it. And knowing the minutia, the details of things like this, it doesn't really make a big impact in the end, right? So we're naturally curious creatures. We would love to know everything that's going on, surrounding our employer and, maybe this job opportunity. But a lot of it will never be disclosed. It just never will. And it's very unsatisfying for a lot of us, but that's the reality. Don't create awkwardness or a distraction by bringing it up when it's really not necessary. It's not worth potentially blowing the job over. Sophia Crummel. Yeah, see, that's what I suspect. It's like a standard thing. It's different programs, stuff like that. Guy Incognito says, aren't they also not allowed to ask about these things like ethnicity unless it's vital to the job? I'm not sure. That's an American thing. I don't know what the laws are. And do they vary by state? I'm not sure. So if you're in the US, you might be able to fill in those details. Listen, the other reality here is that it may be illegal for them to ask certain questions in a job interview. Doesn't stop a lot of people, to be honest with you. They just do it. A lot of times when they do it, it's out of ignorance. It's not a malicious thing. It's that, like, for example, if you interview with a hiring manager, right? Hiring manager is not an HR person. A hiring manager is just a boss. They're a manager. You know, if you're an accountant, you're trying to get a job as an accountant, you talk to the hiring manager. The hiring manager is the chief accountant supervising a bunch of accountants in an accountancy company. You know what I mean? They're not like an HR expert. They're not down with like all the labor laws and all the employment standards, right? So, you know, you go to a job interview with them. It might be a very small operation, very small company. It might only be 10 people there. They don't have a dedicated HR person, you know? So you interview with the boss, who's like an accountant. So they might ask you questions that technically they're not supposed to ask. It's not because they're trying to do anything bad, just they may not realize all the rules, right? In the same way that you might not know all the rules either. So occasionally, even though it's technically not allowed, you still get these questions, so you need to know how to respond, right? I mean, the salary one is like that, like where they say, what's your current salary? And in the United States, in like, 30 or 40% of the states, it's like it's technically illegal to ask it. But in most places, it's perfectly normal. It's perfectly allowed. You know, so I'm not sure if this is one of those where, you know, some states you can't ask about ethnicity, other ones you can. Right? I don't know. You know, I don't know how that stuff works. I'm not an HR guy either. I'm not like a recruiter. I'm not down with all the labor laws. I've had to learn labor laws to do various things, but I just look it up. And that's what you can do. Like you can go to Google. Usually it's Google. Now I would try ChatGPT with this. A lot of countries and regions, like states or whatever, they post all their laws publicly so that the public can read the law for themselves. So if you know what the act is or the name of the law, I don't know what they call it in the States. Is it acts? Like, for example, where I am in Canada, in Manitoba, you know, the all the rules, all the law of the land as to when it comes to hiring and all that kind of stuff, right? There's the Employment Standards Act or whatever it's called. You look that up, and then you can once you're looking at the document online in a web browser, then you could just say find, you know, where it says interview question or salary, you know, and it's bam, here it is. They're not allowed to say this or they're not allowed to ask that. There you go, right there. And you can read the actual law. And that's how you can get some clarity on this. They also have a hotline where you can call the people that police this stuff, like that department of the government that enforces these specific laws, right? And you can ask anonymous questions and say, like, you know, I got a question. My employer is doing this. Are they allowed to do this? And they'll give you an answer, and then they'll say you can look at the law yourself. It says that right here, right? So in the U.S., as I understand, they also have that, right? So there's things you can do to get answers for very specific questions like that in your region. Al says, do you have experience in the billing department? If you mean accounts payable, yeah, I've overseen an accounts payable operation with a bunch of other things. I don't know how that enters into it, but there you go. It's a very mundane kind of thing. I find that the accounting function is just a very mundane part of business. Some people live for it. It's very important, but it's about as interesting as, you know, the person that comes and fixes the alarm system. You know, it's a necessary evil. It's a service you need to be in business as part of the cost of being in business, but it's not where the action is happening. Ah, I see. You made a joke. A joke at my expense. Get it? Billing department, my expense. You wouldn't understand. It's very topical. Get in the chat. We've reached the end of the chat, so send me your questions. There are 25 people here listening to me blather on about everything and nothing. Hopefully this is somewhat useful to you. We've just passed the 1 hour mark. I can go for a bit longer if you guys have questions. Anything on careers, job search, that kind of stuff, life, the universe, and everything. It's all good. Business, management, that's the stuff I normally talk about. I'm sure Al will find something to talk about. Al always comes out with something just out of left field all the time. But that's fine. It keeps me on my toes. Tune in on Friday. On Friday, I'm doing some more live streams. I've got 2. I've got another episode of this, Honest HR Nitrous, so where we talk about job search and careers. But earlier in the day, like around noon in Central Time, North America, I'm doing a live stream on leadership and management. And the topic for Friday is something I'm actually quite interested and curious to do. It's about a very specific type of corporate fraud that's been happening for a very long time. Hitler participated in this fraud. Enron participated in this fraud. It's a very specific type of fraud. It involves off-balance sheet entities, special purpose entities. And with some developments, this type of fraud is still alive and kicking. And as I said, with some new developments, they're making this type of fraud virtually indetectable. So I think it's a fascinating idea. I don't normally talk about stuff like this, but I think it was a very interesting concept. I like interesting concepts. So we're going to talk about that on Friday, noon Central Time, North America. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, join me for that. I'm not an accountant. I'm a finance guy, so I won't be able to go into extreme details of the accounting treatment, but just the concepts is kind of like what's interesting to me. Yeah, for those who don't know, there's accounting and then there's finance. One is money in the past, that's accounting. The other one is money in the future, that's finance. Right? They're 2 different worlds. You know, accounting is like, how much money did we make? Where did the money go? That kind of stuff. Auditing, what happened? Who got paid? Who didn't? Right? Where's the second set of books? You know, like that's accounting, right? Finance is money in the future. What should we do? Should we invest in this or that? You know, if we do option A, B, or C, which one is going to pay off, right? The most. Where do we get money? How do we finance something? How do we raise capital? Things like this, right? So that's finance, like portfolio management, time value of money, all that kind of stuff. That's finance. So it's money in the future. Totally different set of things. Deals with risk and return. You know, so it's like big kind of dividing line between these 2 worlds. And it requires 2 different personalities too, to be honest with you. So when I took my MBA, for what it's worth, Master's of Business Administration, I specialized in finance. A lot of rich people will specialize in finance. They'll learn finance. You can't like manage money without understanding finance. So it's usually what helps you manage money. And the desk is moving because I'm rocking in my chair like an autistic person. Stimming, I believe is what you call it. Might have something to do with the fact that I've just had 2 Red Bulls. So there, now you know. Al says, what's your favorite landmark in Canada? I've been to Vancouver, BC. Vancouver. Bunch of, there's 2 types of people that live in Vancouver. Actually, 3 types of people. One are the tree-hugging, environmentalist, hippie types, way out on the fringes of the left wing. The second type are the snowbirds. They're people that have retired there to run out the clock, usually very rich. They're the ones that own all the stuff and all the land and all the buildings. And then the third type are like some kind of weird fascist extremists that live out in the woods. And that's it, really. That's my understanding of British Columbia as a whole. So if you think I might be wrong on this, let me know. I'm in Manitoba. We're right in the middle. We're boring. We've got a very broad-based economy. We're known for nothing at all, except being boring. Of the Canadians, like a very boring country, we're the most boring, with the possible exception of Saskatchewan, but nobody cares about them. And then everybody on the East Coast are just a bunch of fishermen, to my knowledge. I'm just joking, of course. I'm remembering Stomping Tom Connors. That was, I think, Newfoundland's greatest export. And I remember the SNL skit where they had Stomping Tom Connors. This is way back in the day. I'm dating myself. But they managed to blur out one of his legs. They removed it digitally or by putting a hand over a camera or something. So he just had one leg that's stomping, right? So anyway, I don't think we have humor anymore, so I don't think you guys would understand what I'm talking about. Anyway, that's for Al. I hope this is where the learning really begins, when you get me talking about this stuff. So I'm glad I can deliver. I see that I've still got the same 25 people staring at me, so I'm surprised that you haven't all left. But yeah, ask me a question about careers and job search and stuff. It's something I can actually help you with, and I'll be happy to do it. We've got a few minutes left. I go live Monday, Wednesday, Friday generally. So on Monday, I talk about entrepreneurship, and then we talk about job search. On Friday, I talk about business and leadership, and then we talk about job search. And Wednesday, we just talk about job search. This is the week everybody's going back to school. So I suspect that's maybe why there's less people watching my live stream so far this week. That's what I'm hoping. Anyway, so there you go. Get in the chat. Unless you want me to like further bore you by talking about my courses or something, let me know what's up with you. You know, another thing that people could do, I don't know how realistic this is, but I'll just say it anyway. It's like, if you're trying to get an objective understanding of job search, like what you need to do to get hired, right? It sounds kind of weird, but I think a lot of people will only understand that fully if ever you've tried to hire someone. You know, like, I don't know, maybe there's some like thing, you know, that, you know, you could do. You could hire a person for a day, like to do landscaping or so, you know, like I don't know, something. And, you know, to help you in some capacity, right? I'm a YouTuber. So you know, a lot of YouTubers, they build a team around them, you know, and they hire people to do various things. I so far really haven't done that, but you know, like that would be an example. You hire an editor, you hire someone that does your thumbnails, you know, whatever. Just some kind of very low level thing. But if you've ever had an experience like that, it totally changes your understanding of job search because you're seeing things from the other side of the table. So why I'm saying this is because if ever you have the opportunity to do that, you should, just to help you understand what it's like for the person interviewing you or assessing you. You know what I mean? Like, I've had to hire many people over my career. It's not my main line. I never worked in like the HR department, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't get away from it. I've had to fire people too. You know, but if you've never had like those experiences, you don't have the full perspective of what it takes to get hired or what people look for. You know what I'm saying? So if you're between jobs now, you're obviously not going to do this, but like, just bear that in mind. Like, if you want to truly understand what it's like from what it is for a job seeker to get hired, it helps having been on the other side of the table at least once. And then you realize like how you regard candidates and the kind of things you look for and why, right? Akil says, "Hey, Akil here. About to join my first job as a fresher. What are the basic qualities that I should really focus on to get myself into the best position I could be in?" okay, here's in a nutshell what employers value, especially for younger junior employees. Attitude, number one. Don't complain. Don't get all upset. Like within reason. I mean, if they're trying to ask you to do something totally inappropriate, then obviously I'm talking like, all things being equal, be enthusiastic, be happy to help, even if it's inconvenient, just kind of like, I'm always happy to help. Employers appreciate that. Soft skills are what matters most. I don't care what your technical skills are. I don't care what you do. There's always a lot of people that can do the technical skills for like 99% of jobs. Finding someone who can do the job is not that much of a challenge. But the thing that separates a good employee from a bad employee, as far as the boss is concerned, is your attitude. That's make or break. Good attitude, not only do you stay, you get promoted. Bad attitude, you're probably not going to last long, even if you're a better worker. Right? Attitude is very important. So be very helpful. Try to be as enthusiastic as you could possibly be. Understand that the company doesn't exist to serve you. You serve the company, right? That doesn't mean that your needs aren't important. They are, but just keep that in mind. It's not all about you. Your boss tells you to do something you regard it as a little bit unreasonable. That's going to happen, right? That's why you're paid to be there, because it's not a hobby. You know what I mean? It's not something you do on your own terms. Now, once again, within reason, you know what I mean? But just recognize that, right? If you have questions, that's great. The most important thing you can do is get along with everybody. And I know sometimes that's a damn tall order, but pushing in that direction of just getting along with people, being helpful, that's the make or break for like any job, or certainly any junior job. And being interested in it. If you come in there and you want to learn as much as you can, and you still feel like that 2 months later, that's what it's about too. That'll be recognized. Okay, so I think those are kind of the fundamentals. Okay, so you do that stuff and you're going to be fine. As an added bonus, if you go to your boss every once in a while, say every month, once a month, and you talk to them when they're not stressed out, when they're not like, dealing with like a whole bunch of other things, they have a moment, and you go to them in private, you say like, listen, so how am I doing? Is there anything that you see me doing that you would have me do differently? I'm interested, because I want to do a good job. Right? That will help you in several ways. Number one, you will improve. Number two, you're signaling to your boss that you care, about doing a good job, and that's very important. Okay, so you do some of this stuff, and I think things will go well for you. Good question. Al says, greetings from Seattle. Yeah, greetings. Kiss my Seattle, yeah? Al says, give me a hug. Okay. Are you talking to me? You talking to me? Akhil says, thanks a lot for that. I'll take that seriously. Okay, good. I wish you all the best, Akhil. It's an exciting thing to be starting out, and like with your first job or your first career job. That's good, and sometimes people get hung up on like the technicalities of the job and they ignore this stuff, like attitude and enthusiasm and, having good relationships with people. But in the end, this is the stuff that actually wins out. It's the most important thing. It will determine the course of your career, this stuff. People will promote you over other more senior people or other more capable people, to be honest with you, because they would rather work with you than with them. And they'd rather work with you because you're friendly, you're approachable. Whenever they tell you to do something, you say, yes, sir. You don't argue, you don't question, you don't go, oh, good God, I got to do that again. Oh my God. You don't do that, right? And they go, hey, I would rather work with Akhil because I just like Akil. We get along, it's easy. It's easy to work with Akil. Right? There you go. Al says, being enthusiastic. Yeah, that's very important. You could be enthusiastic about the job, or you could be enthusiastic about the person, right? That's where it gets interesting. Jason says, hey there, I have an upcoming interview with a plant director for a manufacturing engineering position. I'm a bit nervous because I feel this is the last interview. What tips could you give me? Okay, a plant manager, or in this case, a plant director, they're usually just jumped up operations people, right? It's not like these people come from marketing or HR or IT or anything like that. They're usually just jumped up operations people. Some of them will come from like an engineering or technician, like technologist type background. Others may come from a management background, depending on the size of the place. It helps if you know who this person is, okay? Because if they're an engineer type or a technician type, you can sort of help relate to them by, knowing that, right? If, on the other hand, they're a business type, they're a management type, like they don't have a background in engineering or being a technician, they're a manager. They're someone that, went to school for business, they wear a suit, and then the next thing you know, they're running a plant, right? You know what I mean? That's a different type of person, okay? So, like, I can only talk in generalities here. I have no idea who these people are. What you should do is you should go and try and find out. If you know this person, like the plant manager, like look at their LinkedIn profile. Look at their background. Where did they come up? Did they come up through being a technician or being a manager, or what? What are they trained in? This kind of thing. And that can tip you off. Generally, these people care about your attitude the best. They want someone that's helpful. They want someone that's, easygoing, that they're enthusiastic about the work they do. And they're enthusiastic about learning, right? It's not that you're like super, super ambitious. You want to climb the ladder very quickly. That's not necessarily what they're looking for. But they are looking for someone that, they're enthusiastic about doing their job, doing this job that you're up for. And also that you have an open mind. You're not just going to do this and sit there for the next 40 years. You're going to do this. And then, you're open to doing what else might be needed of you, depending on how things go, right? You want to help out. That's what they're looking for. Someone who wants to help out. Okay? Now, if they're from a business background, or even if they're not, having an understanding of, this person's high-level perspective. Because the plant manager is going to be running the place. They're going to be caring about efficiency. They're going to be caring about cost, right? And what they would like is they would like to have a bunch of employees working for them that are kind of tuned in to efficiency and tuned in to cost, right? If we can do a proper solution to something, and we have a couple of options, all of which would be a proper solution, but this one's a little bit cheaper, they would rather have the person that recognizes this and is tuned into this and will pick the cheaper solution, which is just as effective as something more expensive. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of thing that they're looking for, right? So number one, try and find out the person, look at their background, see who you're dealing with. Number two, remember they care about attitude. They care about like enthusiasm. They care about, open mind to learning new things and solving problems as they come up, whatever they may be, and just wanting to help out. Hopefully that helps. That's a good question. Travis says, what's the difference between the company's expert and the company's expert 2 channels? Well, hopefully you could see that by going there. The company's expert 2, that's where I put a lot of excerpts from like live streams that are quite long. So if I'm covering a topic, like for example, earlier today, I did a live stream talking about how to answer the job interview question, tell me about yourself. Now, it took me probably 20 minutes to go through that question, like, why are they asking? what's going on there, what are they looking for, why this is a good answer, why that's a bad answer, the circumstances under which they could ask that question, things like this. It's a lot of backstory. I don't just give you say this and I give you the answer in like a minute. I give you the full shebang. Now what I'll probably do is I'll take that 20-minute kind of section, just plonk it on the company's expert too. So if you look up that topic, here's the explanation of it, right? So it's a little bit more in depth in my main channel, a little bit more detail. And hopefully that answers your question. Al says, give me a hug, be my friend, come to my party. I'm so enthusiastic. Well, not that kind of enthusiasm, right? Not for the plant manager. And then you could ask him or her if they like long walks on the beach, That's just a totally normal thing that comes up in the job interview. That should be a standard job interview question. Right up there with, if you could be any animal, what animal would you be? Which I have done a video on, because they did ask that question. You still occasionally get people asking that question. Can you believe it? That question, I think, came up, it originated in the 70s, when people were into a lot of weird ideas. You're sitting there with someone in corduroy bell bottoms with a 8-inch afro, and they're asking you, if you could be any animal, what animal would you be? And there's a right answer and a wrong answer. So now go watch my video on that. That's the video I've done on my channel that I'm of which I'm the most proud. I love doing that video. So check it out. Go do a search. The company's expert. What animal are you? Right? Or just the company's expert animal should hopefully bring that up. Jason says, thank you. I know he is someone that worked from logistics to the director of the plant. Okay. So like head of logistics and then the plant manager or something. So, okay. That's good. Yeah, you're going to be the type of employee that's going to stick around for a while. It's going to want to help out. Not going to be any trouble. Also, I'm always watching your videos, but this is maybe the second time I've been able to catch you live. I'm usually hearing your lives as a podcast while I study. Well, don't let me impact your studies so you flunk out. Can you do that? Can you listen to something while you're studying something else? I didn't think that's possible. At least not for me. I've got a single core CPU in here. I can't listen to two conversations at once, or read one thing but be listening to something else. I can't do that. Some people can't. I once worked in an office. I had my office kind of, like an office for me, and then you go outside of my office and you have these open areas where people had workstations, and there was like a bunch of women, and they had headsets because they were on the phone like constantly. But at the same time as they're on a headset having a phone call with someone, they're at their computer and they're typing and they're like looking at emails, reading emails, and like they're tuned into the email, but they're also tuned into a phone call about something else. And then they're having a conversation. Like all 3 or 4 of these women, they're like saying stuff, and the other one's saying, they're like having these conversations out in this like open concept kind of office type affair. And it's like, I'm thinking, like, how can you do that? How can you concentrate on 3 things at once? I can't even do 2, So anyway, if you got like a dual core thing in here, you can study one thing, nuclear physics, listen to me talk about job search and weirdness. Hey, all the more power to you. You're showing your value right there. You already like blew me out of the water. I can't do that. You're welcome, Jason. That's some very nice things you're saying. Don't be nervous. You're going to be just fine. Listen, practice makes perfect, right? Job interviews and stuff, or like anything else, it's the more you practice, the better you get. There's no real magic. It's like learning a sport or a musical instrument. It's like anything else. If you want to get good at this, let's say interviews, I think you're talking about interviews. You just said you listen to me while you study. But if it's interviews and you're nervous about that, it's 2 phases. Phase 1, learn the answers to questions, figure out what you're going to say as an answer, memorize it, right? That's the first phase. You work by yourself. And then the second phase is work with somebody else, friend or family member or career coach. Do mock interviews. So it's like a rehearsal over and over again. And they'll give you pointers and stuff. And you just refine what you do over and over again. It's, you know the answers. Now you just got to say them in front of somebody that's like staring at you. It feels awkward. You feel anxiety. You feel a bit weird. But like that's simulating the conditions under which you're doing a real job interview. So you learn to do it. And then when you do a real actual job interview, you walk in there, you're confident because you know all these questions backwards and forwards, and then you kick ass. The fact that you got strangers staring at you, that's what you're used to, So don't be nervous. You're going to be just fine. And whatever else it is, it's also practice makes perfect. Okay, if anyone has any last minute questions, ask them now because I'm going to sign off in a couple minutes. We're approaching the hour and a half mark here. And check out my courses while we're waiting for the questions. This is probably the one that's going to be of most interest to everyone here. If your job search campaign is kind of not going anywhere fast, you don't understand what you need to do, you don't understand how everything works, check that out. It's all my advice in one place. I tackle how to get jobs in the posted job market and how to get jobs in the hidden job market. That's where the real action is. So check that out. It's also tailored more towards introverts. So, the solution isn't like go out and like network and schmooze with people. That's not what the answers are. Link in the description box to these courses and to videos that go deeper into what they are. So you can see how they work and what you get and all that kind of stuff. Check out this. This is if you want to improve your communication skills, develop some above average communication skills. This will make you a contender if you want to climb the ladder, be promoted into management, that kind of thing. It's also just really good skill, like communication skills are very important. And if you want to learn business being the scientific study of how to make money, check out this, the $100 MBA. That's more for people that are into entrepreneurship and, learning business. But this has tremendous value for people that work in jobs. It'll help you understand your employer, understand what's important to them and what isn't. And knowing this, it can help you outperform. It also is the tools for if you want to do a side hustle or work for yourself, all that kind of stuff. So check out these courses. There's links below in the description box under this live stream, and also links to the resources I have that explain all of these, so you can learn more about them if you're interested. I will be back on Friday, same time, noon Central Time, North America. And I'm pretty much going till about this time on Friday. So if you have more questions, you can come back. I'll try and help you out. We're talking about business on Friday in the morning, and then the first part, and then the second part is like this, job search. So I will see you then. I think that's it for questions. So thanks, everyone. You guys are awesome. Always remember that. Don't let people convince you otherwise. You got to take care of your mental health, and do this stuff properly, and then you will crush it. So best of luck to everybody. I will see you guys Friday. Take care.